ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਚ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਹੈ ਜਸਮੀਤ। ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਬਾਰੇ। ਐਂਡ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਫਰੈਂਡ ਸਰਕਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਆ ਜੋ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਆ। ਪਰ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਵਾਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਰੁਕ ਕੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਿਹਤ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਅਸਰ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ because of the divorce that they're going through। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵ ਸਟੀਰੀਓਟਾਈਪ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੀਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਸੋਚ ਦਾ ਅਸਰ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਐਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ। ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਜਦ ਸਾਡੀ ਸੋਚ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੰਨੀ ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਓਪਰਚੁਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਚੈਲੰਜਸ ਐਂਡ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਐਂਸਿਸ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਆ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਐਂਸ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਕਿ ਜਦ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਚੈਲੰਜਸ ਸੀ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ। ਐਂਡ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਖੁਦ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ।
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਮਨੀਤ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਜਸਮੀਤ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੁੱਲ ਕੇ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਦੇ ਸੋਚ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਪੋਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਗੇਜ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਰਿਸਪਾਂਸ ਮਿਲਿਆ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਹਾਰੇ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਸੀਗੀ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਹਾਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ। ਐਨੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਮਾਈਲਸਟੋਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੰਘਦੇ ਹੋ, ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪਰਸਨ ਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਲਾਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ, ਗਾਂ ਆਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਵਧਾਉਣ ਦਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੰਦਾਜ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਗਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੋਣਾ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਦਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ। ਸਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਫੋਕਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਖੁੱਲੇ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਵਧੇ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਸੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ, ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ, ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਫਰੈਂਡ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੋਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਨੈਰੋ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਓਪਰਚੁਨਿਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ, ਉਹ ਅੰਦਰ ਹੀ ਅੰਦਰ ਘੁਲਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਬਿਮਾਰੀਆਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਰਿਸ਼ੀ, ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਫॉर ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਈਜ਼ੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਐਂਡ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਡੀਟੇਲਸ ਆਦੇ ਡਿਸਕਲੋਜ਼ ਕਰੋ। ਸਾਡਾ ਫੋਕਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਬਾਰੇ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਨਾ। ਸੋ ਟੂ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਆਫ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਆਪਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸੋ।
Thank you. My name is Rishi Duck. I am currently divorced. I was married in 2010. I was married for 5 years when I went through the process of a separation, and it has been a struggle. And especially for the first few years, just kind of understanding why it's happening and why it happened and the challenges as to what was going to be ahead in the future for me, and just dealing with emotions and explaining to people and family and friends. It was a lot of stress and a lot of emotions with the entire process.
So ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ already ਇੰਨੇ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਆ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਖੁਦ ਦੇ ਇਮੋਸ਼ਨਸ ਸੀਗੇ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸ ਦੇਣਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਥੋੜੀ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਡਾਊਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਥੋੜੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਖੁਦ ਦੇ ਇਮੋਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਥਿੰਕਿੰਗ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਜਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰੀਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਣ ਲੱਗਾ ਆ।
So yes, it kind of came to me as a little bit of a surprise as to, so with any marriages, you have your ups and downs. But one thing I wasn't really expecting, was a separation. There comes a point in your life where you start questioning your status, you start asking if you're happy, you start wondering what your future is going to look like. So during the first stages of separation, there was still a lot of pain, there was still a lot of hurt, there was probably some guilt with it, questions, could I have done something different? Did I do, was I a good husband? Was there more that I could do? I guess part of it kind of made you feel like you failed. And so no one gets married to separate or to be divorced. So a lot of it was just kind of trying to figure out, what am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to process this? And how do I kind of move forward from this? I guess both parties, we both understood that we're in a place in our life that we wanted to go our separate ways. And then I guess from there, it was like, how do we take that separation? How do we take this next step to a point where we go our own paths and we basically create our own journeys? And when you have a child involved, it makes it a little bit more difficult, because now not only are you dealing with your own emotions, but you also have to think about your child. And so I had a good support system around me, but one of the biggest challenges in talking to people that are close to you is that unless you've gone through it, unless you've experienced this, there's not really much advice. There's not really much that others can say other than to listen to your pain and your struggles. And, I had a really good support system. And as much as many people didn't want to see me go for a divorce, I think they understood the reason why it's happening. And so for the first 6 months to the first year, emotions were kind of up and down. There was days where I'd wake up and I'd feel like I'm on top of the moon and, I'm starting a new life and, I'm ready to take on a new journey. And then there was days where, you kind of realize, you kind of wake up and you're like, I'm not part of a family anymore. I was a unit once upon a time. My unit's now broken apart. And when you got a child that is involved where you then are dealing with shared custody or joint custody, then you start to kind of worry a little bit and you start to wonder, like, are you making the right decisions? Am I compromising the well-being of my child to make myself happy through the separation and divorce? And, I wasn't really expecting, even though I think the writing was on the wall, I wasn't really expecting the divorce to happen. I figured, we've gone through so much as a couple, we should be able to figure this out. But I guess in our society, there's a big stigma as to, divorce being a failure. And so I think a lot of people will compromise their own happiness just to stay in that status, to stay in that unit, just because, we're expected to do so. And like I said, we don't get married to separate. We don't get married to be divorced. And we didn't bring a child into this world to break our family apart. But you begin to realize that, going separate ways is probably the best thing you could ever do. And I remember reading an article once, and a child that went through a breakup with her parents went through a breakup when she was at a young age, and I think she was around the same age as my daughter. So she never knew anything different. And this article talked about how it was her story and how she didn't know what it felt like for her mom and dad to be together. And so as she got older and she became a teenager, she became a little bit frustrated and became a little bit annoyed with just her whole environment and her living situation with going back and forth between both parents. And one thing that she realized, and one of the things that she realized later in life, was that she was happy that her parents took that step to separate, so then the child can live a happy life in two environments. And so obviously, if you've got a negative environment for your child, that's going to have severe consequences on their upbringing and their development. So right now with my child, she lives in two loving environments. She has, a loving mother, and she has a loving father, and a loving grandparents, and, masis and buas and cousins. So she gets to see love all around. She gets to experience love. If we remained married, I don't know how, how her life would be. Would it be fake? Would we be pretending? Would me and my ex-wife be pretending to be in a loving environment, but really deep inside, hurting with pain because we're trying so hard to keep our unit together? So the first few years, it was a challenge, and especially when lawyers are involved as well. I think that makes it very difficult. They say you can heal for healing others, and I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to help other people that have gone through similar journeys. And I always suggest, if possible, don't get lawyers involved, unless it's a very complicated process. There's mediators out there that can just do almost as a good job, if not better. But what happens with lawyers, there's this strategy on how they can get, they want to win cases. They want to get more for their clients, whether that's through financial assets or whether it's through child access, or whether it's through a retirement savings. So, there is a fine line that shouldn't be crossed, but I think in between a battle of lawyers and letters and communications, the clients, the actual people that are paying for this, that are going through the divorce, don't actually know what's being told, like what the truth is, versus what is a strategy that is being led by the lawyers. And which that process alone, just that journey through going through lawyers, or that process through lawyers, can definitely create more hate and more anger between, both yourself and between you and your ex-partner. I've heard of cases where couples have come together and just walked into a room with a mediator and say, look, this is the situation and this is what we're going to do. And they've been able to rip off that Band-Aid in an easy, just one shot. But when lawyers are involved, it becomes a little bit complicated. And then you got to back up a lot of your facts, and, going back into, like, you've got to dig deep into financial statements, and then you got to go back into like emails and text. So the process of the divorce itself was very difficult. Getting lawyers involved made it even more difficult.
Yeah. And ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ experience alag hunda hai and unique hunda hai, है ना? So of course, like for some couples, lawyers ਦੀ help ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ. And of course, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ case ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ experience ਥੋੜਾ different ਸੀ. But I think up until now, ਜੋ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਕਿਹਾ ਆ, generally ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ relate ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. Because ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ beginning ਤੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ, sometimes ਅਸੀਂ ਰੋਕ ਕੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਦ ਕਿਸ ਦਾ divorce ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ, ਕਿ beyond ਉਹਨੇ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਹਨੇ ਕੀ ਕਿਹਾ, ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, like behind, like instead of that gossip, ਅਸੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਿਹਤ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਅਸਰ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ already discuss ਕੀਤੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਦੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ your days, sometimes you feel great, sometimes ਤੁਹਾਡਾ mood ਥੋੜਾ low ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ guilty feel ਕਰਦੇ ਆ. ਇਹ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ normal ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ divorce process ਰਾਹੀਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਕਿ ਮੈਂ failure ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਂ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੀ ਸੀ, ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ try ਕੀਤੀਆਂ. So I think ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ emotions ਤੁਸੀਂ describe ਕੀਤੇ ਆ, for all the viewers that are watching today, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ normal process ਹੈਗਾ ਆ for anyone that is going through a divorce. And ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ feelings ਆ ਬਹੁਤ normal ਆ. So I just want to thank you for even, having the courage to share that vulnerability with us. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ mention ਕੀਤਾ, ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ relation ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ sort out ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, is this working for us? Is this family structure working for us? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ. Sometimes financial pressure ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, which factor into your decision of separating. And ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ I think as a community, ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਚਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਦੇ loved ones ਨੂੰ approachable ਲੱਗਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, marital issues ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ, and they're trying to figure things out, because in a marriage, you know, and from ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ, it's up and down, right? Even relationships ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਆਪਣੀ community ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ openly relationships ਬਾਰੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ. It's more of a quiet topic, right? But ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ spaces create ਕਰੀਏ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਪਾਂ family ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ. And I loved the fact, Rishi, ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ advice ਦੇਣੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ. And if you have not been through something, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਉਹ person ਕੀ like ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੀ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਰਿਹਾ, but you can listen. And I think listening is very powerful and very impactful to someone's life. And I think ਅਸੀਂ more so focus karna ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ in the next part to understand ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ mental health challenges ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ, you're having good days but you're having bad days, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ I'm a failure, and maybe ਉਹ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ community ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਆ, pressure ਆਪਣੀ community ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ, like you get married, it's indefinite, you can't get out of that situation. But ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ circumstances ਬਹੁਤ unique ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਅਲੱਗ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, divorce ਦਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਵੀ it can range, right? But ਕਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ helpful ਸੀਗੀ from your family and friends? ਤੁਹਾਡੇ, you know, if ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਪਸ ਦੇਖੋ ਆਦੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਵੱਲ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ process ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਇਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ friends and family ਕੀ ਸਹੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ support ਕਰਨ ਲਈ, ਤੇ ਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ that makes it even harder for the person going through it?
Yeah, that's good questions. And so before I answer that question, I'm going to go back and just share a little story. I had a friend during my marriage that was going through a separation, and he was going through such a tough divorce. It was very difficult for him. Lawyers were involved, and well, it's not because the lawyers were involved that made it difficult, but both parties were just not communicating. They hated each other, and they just couldn't see eye to eye in a lot of things regards to their kids and their financial assets and what not have you. And so I remember, like, there were days where I would just listen to him, but I had nothing I could relate to. I was still married. You know, I just had my daughter, you know, a couple of years before that. And he would share some of his stories. And all I could say was like, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I'm sorry, but I'm here to listen. And that's all I could do was just, you know, listen. And how he would describe his stories and his feelings, like I would feel his pain, but I couldn't relate to his experiences. There was nothing I could say to him to really tell him that things would be better and don't worry, you know, life will move on, because I hadn't gone through it. So even though I felt like I was being useless to him by not giving, you know, not really sharing any kind of words of optimism, but for him, it was helpful because he was able to get it out from inside and talk. And so then when I went through, you know, when we became separated, the first person I called was that same friend. And I was talking back to him, and he was, you know, when he was talking, when we would engage and when we would talk, I could kind of relate better to some of his stories and his scenarios. And he had words of wisdoms, and he had, you know, he was very encouraging, and, you know, would keep me motivated to, you know that there's a better future out there, stay strong, and, you know, keep going. And so I guess kind of what I did from there was, I kind of paid it forward by helping out others as well, which I can touch on later. But in answering your question, just within my own immediate support circle, my family and friends, just being able to talk to people and just be able to express yourself. A lot of people do call and like, oh, I heard you're going through separation. Oh, I heard you know, you guys are not talking. I heard it's really messy. It's complicated. You know, those are the wrong things to say, right? But like the right things to say to people that are going through this are just probably like, do you need to talk? You know, I'm here for you. If you need to grab a coffee, or, you know, go for a walk or go for a run. Like those are the things that will help, I think, encourage a better conversation. Because there's people out there that just want to know the gossip, right? They want to be the first to know. And then there's people that are there that are genuine, that want to help you. And even though they may not have the experience to be able to, you know, give you any type of direction or to relate and share experiences, but just how I was able to listen to one of my good friends. All I did, because I was able to listen, that was just sometimes more than enough. Obviously, words of encouragement goes a long way, but you hear that over and over and over again. Everyone tells you you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. I think my biggest challenge for me was not really so much the separation of my partner, but it was the separation of the unit and, having to deal with the custody piece of our child. Because, I was equally involved, like with my daughter, as much as my ex-wife was when we were together. I would be involved with, morning breakfast and bedtime stories and, anything else a family would do. So then when that kind of gets taken away from you and you wake up to a house where, you don't have your daughter running into your bedroom like, daddy, wake up, wake up. When you start to like go through days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and you don't have that in your life, you feel a big, massive void. So my biggest challenge with my separation was more so around my daughter. And even till now, we're on a shared schedule. But there are times when I don't have my daughter where it is a little bit, upsetting, because, as your daughter, you should, as we have been with our parents, it's just like you have access to your kids that, you see them running around, and even though you're not constantly attached or with them 24/7 by, involved with like activities or teaching them or educating them or reading a book, but this just their presence around is enough to keep you going. And then when that kind of is taken away, you start to question things like, okay, well, what am I doing now? What am I doing today other than work and going to the gym and playing the soccer? Like, what do I do now? What do I do next? As a father, you become occupied as being a dad, and as a mother, you become occupied as being a mother and guiding them and teaching them. And then when you kind of don't have that during your shared schedule, when you don't have your child for that week or days, or it becomes a little bit of a challenge adjusting yourself to an environment where your child is not around you. But the advice that I guess I give people, if they know people that are going through divorce, is to reach out and just, offer an ear, just, you may not have experiences that you can share, but just listen. And don't be negative. Don't see it as a negative thing, because, there's better things that can come out of the situation. There's better subjects, better conversations that you could be having, rather than wanting to know the details of the relationships and why did it happen and what did they do. And I'll be honest, I was guilty of it. Like, part of me would, wanted to share the details. Part of me wanted to get into the day-to-days and try to explain myself so I didn't feel like a failure. And I may have done that a few times, but then I realized that's not getting me anywhere. It's not serving my purpose. I think what's going to heal me is be able to realize that, there's a better future ahead for me. And there's more to see in life, rather than being enclosed to a relationship where you feel confided and you feel alone, or you feel stuck and you don't know what to do. So
both like helpful tips ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ, and even from our experience of working in mental health, ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ always ਜਿਹੜੀ issue ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ life ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਆ, ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ every time ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ phone ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੁੰਨੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ. I liked Rishi ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ, someone's like, maybe calling and saying, want to go for a jog, want to go for a coffee, doing another activity, right? Because that changes your habit. Because ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ moments ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ, there's a change in your routine, there's a change in your home structure, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ unit ਘਰੋਂ change ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ family ਨਾਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ, ਹੁਣ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ change ਆਈ ਹੋਈ ਆ. During those times, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ vulnerable ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. You can fall into unhealthy coping, right? ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੈੱਡ ਤੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੇ, ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ properly ਖਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹੇ. ਕਈ ਲੋਕ, substance ਵੱਲ lean ਕਰਦੇ ਆ for support to manage their emotions. So I think as family and friends, it's really important to reach out and be there. And ਉਹਦਾ ਇਹ ਮਤਲਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ always ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ. Be productive and be intentional. ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁੱਛ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, are you fully listening and wanting to absorb ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਆ? But ਅਸੀਂ also encourage ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ sometimes ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਉਹ family and friend support ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ. And ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ professional support ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਲੈਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ. You know, whether it be a counselor, a support group, online forum, like ਅਸੀਂ SOCH through women and men's forum ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ. And I'm sure the topic of relationships and divorce is going to be included in that, ਕਿ ਲੋਕ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ. What would you say about people reaching out for professional help during that time?
I would recommend it because I was fortunate that I had a good support system. I have a lot of friends and I have a big family. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think there was anyone that came up to me and said, hey, you gotta make this work. You gotta try to get back together just for the sake of, you know, society, or for, you know, because you're married and divorce shouldn't happen. Like, I think we're pretty liberated as a family, and you know, I have some friends that have also gone through divorces that they understood. So my support system was very strong, and I was fortunate in that regards. I can't even imagine how difficult this would be if I was doing this alone, or if I did this alone, sorry. Well, I should say doing it alone, because you still, the process, I guess it still continues, because, you know, like I said, in reflecting back with, and even this discussion at the beginning of this meeting, you know, it does touch on emotions that, you know, you've kind of buried and you tucked away, and maybe have dealt with it, but still it comes to surface when you start talking about it. But getting professional help, I think, is a good thing if the support is out there. I do remember when I actually went to my doctor at the beginning, just because I didn't feel like I wasn't getting proper sleep. I was waking up like a few times. I was waking up throughout the night, and I didn't feel myself. I didn't feel motivated. I didn't feel driven. And I knew that I had to talk to someone. So I remember talking to my family doctor and asked for him to put me in touch with someone that I could talk to. He gave me a few numbers, but I never followed through, because I felt like, will this person be able to relate to my scenario? You know, will there be a cultural difference in, you know, what they know and what we experience? And so I was looking for more of a South Asian counselor, and the names and the numbers didn't reflect that. So I never picked up the phone and made that dial. But I would advise, especially for people that don't have a strong support system, to definitely reach out. Don't feel alone. There's a lot of bad things that could happen. There's a lot of negative bad decisions that you can make when you're in a state like that. Drinking is one of them. Suicide is another. You know, many forms of addictions, like different types of addictions, whether it's drug or smoking. But I knew better not to fall into that trap, because I have, you know, just growing up as a child, I was very familiar with what addiction looked like with my father. So I didn't really want to, you know, fall into the same trap. And I wanted to be strong for my daughter, and definitely try to like get back on my feet. And, you know, I think my daughter kind of kept me strong, kept me going. But it is difficult. There are times where, you know, you want to go out and you just want to, you know, you want to drink, or you want to do things that are not the best decision for you. But if you feel like, you know, you're at the end of the road and you just don't know which direction to turn to, that's a good indication that you definitely need to be talking to someone. I think I experienced that very early in the separation, which was a good thing for me, because I knew that was like kind of rock bottom. And a lot of it, again, was because of just that custody battle with my child. But at that point, you know, I started talking more to my friends, and I was a broken record. And I had probably 5-6 of my friends that would call me every day, 5 to 10 times a day. And it was like, hey, how's it going? Are you okay? And it wasn't like, how are you feeling today? But I knew deep inside why they were calling me. They wanted to check in. They wanted to see I was good. And those conversations, they went a long way. And it wasn't just about, you know, it became not just about conversations of my separation and my feelings. It came about, okay, so what's new and how's your new job? And, you know, how was your dinner last night? Or, you know, what do you got planned for the weekend? It wasn't, but you still needed that interaction. You still needed to feel important, especially when you're kind of back on the mend. So, and I'm very thankful for that support system. And then slowly people around you start to see that, okay, he's doing okay. I don't need to call him 10 times a day now. Maybe I'll call him once a day. And then you start to feel good because you're like, okay, I'm doing well. I'm back on my feet. So yeah, if you are feeling stuck and you're feeling that you have no one to talk to, you can definitely reach out to your foundation and put them in touch with me directly. I'm, you know, like I said, I've helped other people that have gone through this process, and just by sharing experiences. And again, healing others, you know, it's a great feeling. Just being able to share your experience and knowing that somebody could feel better by just talking and sharing some of your own moments of past and giving them some advice. Just, you know, you know, you can't put a price on that.
And ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਫੋਰਚੂਨੇਟ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਪੋਰਟਿਵ ਆ ਪਰ ਅਨਫੋਰਚੂਨੇਟਲੀ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਕਈ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ especially because we touched on it a little bit ਕਿ you know culturally divorce ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ negatively view ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ sometimes ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੇ pressure ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਰਹੋ without really understanding ਕਿ sometimes it's better to separate because ਸਾਰੀ family ਦੀ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਿਹਤ ਵੀ ਦੇਖਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ so I'm really glad ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਵੀ you know ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ and of course ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਥੋੜਾ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਯੂ نو ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੰਸਰਨ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਜਾਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ what are they going to do are they going to help me ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਵੀ ਪਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ for all the viewers sochmentalhealth.com ਉੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਿੰਗ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ beneficial ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਆ so I think that's a good starting point for our viewers as well and of course ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ support karna chaਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ about divorce listening is always key I think ਉਹ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ share ਕੀਤਾ ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਜੇ ਕੁਝ advice ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ just you know ਆਪਣਾ ਕੰਨ ਦੋ and just let them talk and of course you know we just want to thank you so much for sharing your experience and ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹੀ ਮਕਸਦ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ divorce ਬਾਰੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਖੁੱਲ ਕੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ and of course ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੀ ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ at least ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰੋ ਕੀ ਪਤਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਸਕੀਏ ਕਿ ਜਦ ਕੋਈ ਡਿਵੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਿਹਤ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਅਸਰ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ and it can take a long while to resolve so thank you so much Rishi and for the viewers ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਈਮੇਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ and ਸਾਡੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ sochmentalhealth.com thank you so much for watching ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ